a few weeks ago I was talking to a friend of mine about art. He's a musician, and I've had my experience with a lot of forms of art, but I mostly write these days. And I touched on the idea that the artist has a certain responsibility. And to explain what I meant by that, I had to lay out my thinking on what art is and why it exists. Why do we create art? Why do we tell new stories? Why is there new art developed? Which I think is a genuine question. It isn't obvious to me, or it wasn't obvious to me why we would do that, why we would consume or witness, experience is a better word, art constantly. Well, to do so, I explained my limited understanding and maybe my slightly incorrect understanding of Carl Jung's vision of dreams, and art is a reflection of that, or art is a simulation of what dreams do. There is a finite and known world, which is, well, there's a finite and a known world, and then there's an infinite and unknown world around it. This is a way to visualize it, at least a way I've found useful. Then between those two worlds is a fine line, through which is a border through which knowledge has to pass to become known. It's a strange constellation, but maybe it's something like matter or information has to pass through to exist for us. Now, dreams are how that happens. There's a conscious world and there's an unconscious world. And thoughts become conscious, thoughts become known, knowledge becomes knowledge by passing through unconsciousness into consciousness. And it does that through dreams. Now, Jung said that art imitated that. I think at least that's what I've gathered. This is why art has to use symbols, at least visual art uses symbology. It has to grasp at images to explain something that otherwise couldn't be said. So that's a way of thinking of art. We use art to say things that otherwise we couldn't express. So an artist, in a way, and this is how I explain it, in conversation with my friend, I sort of realized this. I think the artist works through art painfully, through death and resurrection, through drafting ideas or rewriting or covering up a canvas and restarting. All this process of this isn't right. The instinct, the artist's intuition, and sometimes knowledge, grasps at an idea and eventually gets there. That's when a piece of art is finished. And having done that, that piece of art now serves as a shortcut to communicate that piece of knowledge. So if an artist, a painting comes to mind, I'll put it up here, of truth emerging from the well. Now, that idea, that painting of truth emerging from the underworld and staring at you and coming for you, and being unable to escape it, is a complex idea that I can't explain fully in words, but a painting can somehow. It's not so much explaining as sort of encapsulate. You can unravel it and pull out meaning from it. You can pull knowledge into your world of consciousness from that. It's like a dream. The artist worked that idea out and put it there, and worked that idea through themselves, and were able to communicate it as a shorthand through that finished piece of art. Now, that happens, I think, similarly in music, I think that happens in writing. I think that happens in poetry. There's an idea there of what that I don't know the answer to. I was talking about this with my friend of what do certain pieces of art do that others don't? What does music tell us that a painting doesn't? What does a movie tell us that a book doesn't? Now, moving back to what incited this video, what is the responsibility of the artist? Because if the artist discovers knowledge and can transmit it somehow, the question becomes, should they? Now, that's a powerful question. Politics often sees art banned or art censored, art controlled. If you look around, if you're somewhat aware of the world around you, you probably see this quite often currently. And if you're a student of history, you've seen this a lot. Now, it makes sense cynically, politically, that a political system would censor ideas that could threaten it, because art necessarily works at the edges of known knowledge. That seems a bit weird to say. It works at the limits of knowledge. It works at the limits of, if you want, the collectively conscious world. And it might bring in ideas that threaten the political order. And it's done so before. Now, politically, you might want to censor those ideas. Now, I seem to have an underlying value that humanity prospers by the bringing in of more ideas. We discover the face of God, the nature of the universe, by pushing these edges. Now, then you cannot build a political order on the edge. There has to be a center. But the responsibility, the question emerges here: is the artist does the artist have agency in transmitting knowledge, or are they working on the edge and, having discovered that knowledge, have no choice but to communicate it? Or can an artist, say as a philosophical exercise in a closed room, discover knowledge, paint a new idea, write a new thought, and choose not to share that? Practically, it seems they can, though I suspect art occurs socially as much as maybe more than it does individually. So the artist works. What is music without a listener? What's a painting without a viewer? But to an extent, that suggests you can write something and hide it away. But some art, theatre, often lots of types of music, and maybe art such as poetry or the art of speaking, can only occur socially. So there's a lot of questions that emerge there. But I thought that was worth communicating. Thank you for listening.